some of the things that we've been tasked to do by City Council with Kathleen. And so Randy, it's all yours.
Thanks, Kevin. And Mark apologizes. He was scheduled to be here, but he had double books in the house. He asked me to step in, so you got the second string. I apologize for that. He'll be back at some point, so not tonight. So again, I think, and Mark, we were both kind of running in different circles today, so we didn't didn't have a whole lot of chance to catch up. But I think the main message he wanted me to share with you all, and I think you've talked to Mark and about getting a little bit better support and liaison from staff to this group, so since you're working on a kind of work plan looking forward. So we've identified somebody that a lot of you probably already met if you've been involved at all in the visioning process and the comprehensive plan process. So I'll tell you a little bit more about her, but Kathleen will be your primary liaison. Of course, the idea would be certainly bring in some subject matter experts if you certainly get some specific projects, for instance, of public works or something like that. If we need to bring in somebody else to take a look at specific projects or specific phases of something. So that is the plan right now. Kevin, I don't know if you and Mark talked about anything a little more or less than that. Or
no, it's more to hear, what level of support the city staff will give us as we try to move forward, and we'll have a discussion about where we see things going and, how we can work together to see if we can do some, move the needle on some things here.
And I think that's kind of our goal is listening. It's more listening to you all tonight and understand kind of what you're wanting to do and planning to do, and then we can sort of come back and revisit it and talk about who can do what again. We're not going to be able to put together any additional plans for anything else like that, but certainly where we can at least bring folks in to talk about costs of projects and that kind of stuff is really the goal, I believe. So with that, I will introduce Kathleen Osher.
Hello. Good evening, members of the lift. So I'm Kathleen Osher. I'm here in a special projects role at the city. Started a year ago to help manage the unifying vision, guiding principal works of the work of 2018, and now transitioning to the long-range planning of updating our comprehensive plan and creating for the first time ever a transportation master plan. So I just learned late last week that I'd be joining you at this meeting to try and understand, one, how we can stay in sync with those long-range planning efforts and make sure that we're thinking through those pieces of both future land use and where we're thinking about transportation investments and capital investments with the transportation master plan. So I think that's part of the reason that it made sense to come and join you this evening in this more informal study session, and then just sort of figure out where you're headed with your work plan and how we can kind of keep those matched up. We're working on the comprehensive plan and transportation master plan. We're in the process of future scenario modeling. We have about 2/3 of the city mapped out according to, the bulk of what we've seen so far has been parks, open space, and then residential. And there are a number of areas that are still up for discussion. And so those include areas that your work plan overlaps with. So it would be great to kind of get that input so that we make sure that the comprehensive plan really is in sync with what you're thinking, as well as the transportation master plan. So, and as Randy shared, we're really here in more of a listening capacity so we can get a sense of what you're thinking and that work plan, and then I think we'll probably take an opportunity to kind of recalibrate that internally. I don't know if maybe you can give me some guidance on your meeting on Thursday, what level of participation, or if you have a full agenda at this point. I know that one of our staff members is joining you with the financial update, yes, our director of finance, but I guess if you can give me some guidance on that as opposed to this evening's discussion. I don't know that we would have many updates before Thursday, but let's make sure that we cover that this evening too.
You probably won't have, based on what our discussion is tonight, anything to report on Thursday. So I would, at this point, I don't see where your presence will be necessary.
Okay.
So what we've been discussing is trying to find opportunities to use the urban renewal in the Columbine Square area that does not really need to engage or the traditional style urban renewal with the developer. The major property, the largest property there, which is was Columbine Square, which is owned by Mr. Chang. That doesn't seem to be going anywhere. So we want to look at other options that we can do. So some of the things that we've heard about are matching grants with the other property owners. So we would like to, with the city, engage those property owners, listen to them and see what their challenges are, what they would like to see happen to that area. I think it would be a good discussion whether urban renewal is involved or not, just long-term planning for the city to have that discussion with them. And if there are some opportunities there, we can start looking at a matching grant potential there. Is my understanding, there may be an opportunity to engage with the county, Arapahoe County, regarding their facility. Not sure what that would be, but it looks like that's something that they may be willing to turn over to the city one way or another. I'm not sure. I mean, it's just very preliminary kind of discussions that I'm hearing about. We'd like to engage with them more to see what they're thinking. The other thing that's been discussed is along the lines with discussions with the city and public works with either infrastructure, streetscapes, and so forth. What could we do to improve that area that fits with what the long-term vision is that the city has regarding the streetscapes in that area? And potentially anything else that we can look at under urban renewal that we're allowed to do. Those are the kind of the things that we've heard about that a lot of other cities engage in. Instead of this typical developer comes in, here's my plan, will you help me, with streets or infrastructure or whatever. So we're trying to look at other opportunities, because I just don't think we're going to, at this point, it doesn't look promising with whatever Mr. Chang has in mind for his property. But if he comes in at some point, then we can have that, we're also kind of hoping that maybe if we start having these discussions, then maybe he'll engage the city and we can do something there too. He sees that we're trying to do something.
And then, so I know that there's been some discussion about your staff.
Well,
or
right.
the potential of having staff. So is there an opportunity to work with somebody that you're going to be bringing on board to help advance some of these conversations?
Not at this moment. It's just that I don't think we're far enough along where we can really know what we'd want to have that staff member to do. I think that's on the table as we start working with the city and with you and other city staff to see what happens, and if something comes from that where we need to have somebody more dedicated to it. Cindy and I have had discussions with the city where, whether we would engage with the city with a part-time person, if there's something that the city has needs for something and then we have something that's enough hours where we can share a person. I'm not sure, we're open to a lot of different discussions. We don't have anything right now that would warrant a full-time person. There was an individual that that was recommended to me a few months ago, had a lot of urban renewal experience. He has since gotten full-time gainful employment, so that's kind of off the table. And then we have to figure out, if we're trying to find somebody part-time, how do we go about doing that? You may have heard, one of the things we've been trying to do, because we do have some things coming up where we're going to need some legal advice outside of the city attorney, just because of the conflict of interest. Let's say, we have to renegotiate the loan that we have with the city. That has not been as fruitful as we've liked. So we're just looking,
If I
anybody
may-
feel, jump in, Jason.
Well,
Go ahead, help me out here.
You did wonderfully. I would throw in one more wrinkle, which is, as we talked about, Kevin earlier was mentioning the whole question of going out to the property owners and doing what we've called a listening tour, gathering information, seeing what kind of projects might be out there. And one of the things that was leading into this tonight's meeting was don't just run out and start doing that kind of project. You might have skilled people on the city staff who know how to do things like that and can set something like that in motion, because I can make some stuff up and probably figure it out. But I've never launched a community listening tour, and even a very focused one like that. So that's the other thing we could use, is some really practical advice on the projects that we want to do. So,
And the listening tour, how had you imagined that you would divvy up
roughly speaking,
pieces, and each of you would engage with those businesses in a certain quadrant or sector?
here's all I know. Here's all I know, and it's very vague. It's like we've got I know we've got a number of property owners who probably don't really know we exist and aren't who would need to be coaxed into a conversation, but we would need to reach out to them, and in some semi-formal interview kind of setting. It could have coffee and Coke. It doesn't matter, but some sort of interview setting, find out what's on their mind, and start to get, in other words, focus groups of the property owners. It's a limited number of people, and out of that we would get practical information, such as nobody wants to do anything, or we heard the same thing over and over again. But how to organize that, I have only the vaguest notion. I mean, again, if forced to come up with something by Friday, I could invent something, but it probably wouldn't be as skillful as what skilled people know how to do.
And I think what, in our discussions with the city is that, being the different things that the city's engaged in recently with the visioning and so forth, that some of the lessons learned from that could apply to this on a very, and again, like Jason's saying, it's I think we're less than 20 property owners total over there. And how do we engage with them in a positive manner to say, we just want to know what your thoughts are. And if there's 20 property owners and they all say, we're not interested, we're okay, then we can check that box and say, okay, what other opportunities are?
A good data to have.
Right, and it's good. And like I said, again, I don't think it would be a bad idea, just on a bigger sense for the city, to say, even if there isn't an opportunity with urban renewal, but they're struggling with crime, or they're struggling with traffic. I mean, I'm just throwing out things that as the city looks to try to improve that area, they understand what the the property owner's struggles are. Whether or not urban renewal is involved or not.
Right.
I think it just
So
would help.
there would be an opportunity for us to sit in on those meetings.
Correct.
When you
Correct.
would organize
Oh,
them.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we definitely want you involved. I think it's, there's, as I understand it, and, I've been in Littleton here now for almost 6 years, there's been some negative connotations with urban renewal within the city. And I think there may have been some, as I understand it, some false information that we may have to overcome in trying to engage some of these property owners. So I don't want to come in there and say, hey, we're here to help. It's not so much, here's what we can do for you. What do you need from us? Can we partner and do something? If we can't, if they're not interested, okay, fine. I'm okay with that. And then that's when we can report back to City Council as they decide whether or not to continue with urban renewal here in the city. But we have to have the engagement. That's something I think has been lacking at least with my tenure on this board. And we're just looking for the city to help us with that, to partner with us, because you guys have been involved with engaging the community for over a year now with the different projects, the Bellevue corridor and the Envision Littleton. I think you can help us with that. You have some expertise you've gained over the past year or so, and you can really help us engage with the property owners over there.
And, I have more questions, right? So,
Sure.
Good.
So, what is everyone's tenure on, Carol, how long have you been tenure on Lyft, the board?
2.5 years.
Okay.
Carol and I came on at the same time.
How long have I been on?
About almost 2.5 years.
And then,
Bless you.
Cindy, are you
1 year.
1 year?
I think it's my second year.
Second year? Okay.
A little over a year.
A little over a year, okay. Because the amended plan references mostly the citywide plan from 2014, the economic development plan from 2013. So did you go through the process of sort of recalibrating any of your thinking relative to the Bellevue corridor plan? I mean, that's, I guess the areas that have overlap were the number 1 and number 4, I think, that were identified in that plan.
We've definitely had people come in and talk about the Bellevue corridor plan. I don't know that we have really looked at it from the standpoint of how does it affect Columbine Square or that area, the area that we're looking at. So I don't know that we've really delved into it enough that we could say this is what we need to do. But I mean, we've looked at it, we've gotten the overview of it. So there might be a step where that's something that we need to do.
Well, it'd be great to get your reactions to that plan and kind of, that was adopted in July last year, right? Just to kind of see how, that meshes with your current thinking. And then for the business outreach side, I mean, obviously it's part of the work that we're doing. Are there relationships that you already have in the area, or is it mostly a new relationship?
It's greenfield. I don't have the impression that we have no liaison with the community. Well, we actually do have some wonderful community members who come to the meetings very regularly, but we don't. There's no channel of communication or anything like that. No, it's greenfield.
Okay. Do you have a database of landowners?
Not a current. We were supposed to, I think that's one of the things that we're going to get from the city is the current list of owners. Again, I don't think any of us individually, I have not engaged in any of the owners because, again, I think we're pretty clear that we think this should be a partnership with the city in trying to bridge that gap and start that dialogue with them.
And the landowner that you mentioned, Mr. Chang,
Yes.
was that conversations directly with Lyft, or was the city
No, that's
involved?
with
Sorry.
just what
Just get a little
we've,
background, sorry.
just the preliminary project that they submitted before the new year, back in November, December. I'm not sure where that is, if that's gone any further, whether there's been a formal application. I don't believe there has been. It's just been that preliminary vision, and I don't think it got a whole lot of traction. So
They actually came and presented to Lyft something very similar, probably a year or so prior to this last submission.
So like 2017?
would have been before.
Well, it was before we were on Lyft.
So it's probably 3 or 4
Right.
years ago. It's
Okay.
probably 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah,
The beauty of having it all recorded. Okay,
yeah.
so I'll take a look at that.
I think some kind of an informational meeting with the owners over there, and a database of the owners would be a great place to start, obviously. But
I mean, there's a
Maybe
few
a-
that we've gotten to know really well through the envision process, but I mean, there's still always more.
Right, but,
So, so
property
building
owners
on that work, yeah.
in that area and on the fringes of it too, who could be affected by it, directly affected by it. And they, I'm sure, would like to know the physical possibilities that we have and what the financial capabilities are. Kevin mentioned grants quite a bit. I know the city has numerous grant programs in there. Sometimes you go scrambling around trying to find people who want to take money. It's really been kind of interesting. So, is that a viable thing? Is it? We don't know. So these are, I think, an early exploration with the people who will come out of that owner database. And who else do we include in that? Should it be more broad-based?
Have you talked with any other urban renewal authorities about
We've
kind of their best
Yeah, we've had
practices?
Arvada come in.
Yeah, Maureen Fair.
Maureen Fair came in
Yeah,
from Arvada, and I think that's kind of where we started thinking a little bit bigger than just looking at Columbine Square, but looking at that whole area, because they had done a lot of streetscaping things that had happened, and they had gotten a little bit outside of what you would think of, like Kevin mentioned, developer comes in and they want money from urban renewal. So that got us really, I think, started thinking, what can we do? And I want to come back a little bit to the streetscaping because it kind of ties into the Bellevue Corridor Plan and what that plan is looking at, and, how this area around Columbine Square and including Columbine Square could be a lot better from a streetscaping standpoint. And maybe that would also get the property owners to think that, well, there's other things we can do because, with our own property, because it's going to look a lot better and it's going to be, out there.
Plant seeds.
So I don't know how much we shared, but City Council wants us to come to them with a plan, a direction by October. We'll have another meeting with them. We had a meeting with them a couple months ago, and from that meeting, they made it clear that they support what we're doing, but they want us to figure out if we're going to do something or not in some of the activities we've been involved with. So that's kind of the catalyst for this, is to start figuring out what else we can do and come back to the city. And the goal is if we have some areas we can address and we can start doing that, we can tell them, here's what we're going to do. If we keep running into brick walls or where there's no engagement from the area, or even the city with partnering with streetscapes, then we'll report that back to City Council and they can decide what they want to do with the future of urban renewal. I think that's kind of what our charge is, and we're just trying to figure it out.
Right. And part of that too, Kathleen, involves maybe not just LIFT's input, but are there areas where we could partner with the city in something they're doing? So partner with the neighborhood, the city, what are our options there? How can that all come together? Because we certainly don't want to do something that gets torn out as soon as the Bellevue Corridor Plan is activated. This is not a temporary type of thing. We want to do things that have a lasting impact on the community in a very favorable way. So,
Yeah. As do we all, right?
it's our job.
Yeah. Okay, so it sounds like I can get you the database of owners, because I can work with our economic development staff to identify those.
That would be great.
I imagine that I can have that so you'd meet again next month, right?
Well,
June, or?
Well, we meet the third Thursday. I've committed, and I think the board is committed to meet more often if we need to really start getting this moving, because once a month may not be enough. Whether that's a second meeting for specific agenda items we need to move forward, or a study session where you say, hey, Kevin, we want to sit down with you and we want to talk about how does the Bellevue Corridor Plan dovetail with the plan for the urban renewal for Columbine Square, the plan for that. What are the overlaps? What are the things that to look at and consider? That could be a study. That could be a study session. If we start engaging with property owners, we get some that say, "Hey, we want to have a discussion with you. We want to be informal in a study session, just to hear what they have to say." Maybe we have to have a couple of them to where we try to get them to come in, just like Envision Littleton had multiple sessions to have the community come in.
We actually went all out into the community.
Right.
So I will say that your success of getting people to come here and meet with you is going to be less than your willingness to go out and meet with them.
To the
It's
other
just
question.
the reality of like the crazy busy life that everyone leads,
No,
right?
No, I
Including
think that's
yourselves,
great.
yeah.
If we have to do street teams, then that's the way we go.
Yeah.
But I had another question. Do you think, if you go back with some of the questions that we've raised tonight, is there anybody who knows how to do that stuff that we could meet with who could train us up on it?
Yeah, well, I mean, you're looking at it, right? Like that's the reason I came on board a year ago, right? So, yeah, and like I said, there's some overlap. I think probably the business that's bursting at the seams is Globus. That's right over there in that area. So we've developed a really nice relationship with them.
Globus is not in.
It's
Urban
not
Renewal, no, they're out.
okay. Sorry.
You
Well,
can
we
have a
did-
nice relationship with them, but they aren't in the urban renewal area.
Excuse me.
Sorry.
We need to review who the business owners are, and I have no issue with engaging with any of the property owners that are in that area, and also the community. I mean, the citizens, the neighbors that live in that area to come, we have some that come here every meeting we meet, and they give their opinions on things, and that's welcomed. Just because that a particular business owner or property owner may not be part of the urban renewal area, but they're adjacent or they have a stake in the area, we definitely want to hear from them. What do they want to see? Because again, if we're talking about streetscapes and we're partnering with the city on doing those and accomplishing those, we want to hear what they have to say about it. Is this something they want to see?
I'll just
Just
make
like
sure
we-
that our database is very clear on
Correct.
Yeah, just list
in
it
or
there,
out or
yeah.
adjacent. So,
Because somebody
so
like-
I'll just make sure that we reference all of that for you.
Yep.
Because those peripheral businesses may also have plans that would have a peripheral effect on the urban renewal area itself. So
Yes.
we don't want to preclude that.
No, I mean, if we, I guess we're not going to do a matching grant with somebody who's not within it,
Right.
but we still, like, again, if it's a streetscape thing or some other infrastructure or whatever it is, we do want to hear their input on what they think. And I think the city would want to hear that engagement also.
And then you all have copies of the Bellevue corridor plan or know where that is?
Yes.
Online,
Yeah,
okay.
presentation on that.
All right. And I'll go back and look at that presentation from, you think 3 years ago, 4 years ago?
Do you want me to find it for you?
Well, I'm
Give you
sure
the
I can
date?
find it. If I have any trouble, can I just email you?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I can
The
find.
minutes were not taken regularly there, so you'd have to go through.
Right, but it's all recorded though, right? Isn't it?
Yeah, well, they should be.
Okay, well then, if I have trouble, I'll reach back out to you. Okay, and then, so, Bill, your question about whether or not grants are viable, is there a next step on that, like to determining that?
Well, I think it's part of the menu that we want to explore,
Okay.
but I think we need to explore other things as well, just because of the fact that we've had grants that have, or grant programs that haven't always been as successful as we would have liked. But if it's a possibility, yeah.
Yes, and if we start exploring that, one of the things I'd want to do is engage with, urban renewals that have had success in that area. How do they assess them? One of the ones I'm aware of is Golden, but that one, for downtown Golden, that was an urban renewal district, but that's been over 20 years ago now. So that's been closed out. I'm not sure anybody may be around as part of their urban renewal today that was involved in that. But if we could find somebody, some other city who's used it effectively, have them come in, we can have a discussion with them to see how did they roll it out, how was it successful, what did they have their challenges with, if we do see that that's an area we can explore.
So as you identify those communities, you'll let me know if you want assistance in reaching out to them? I mean,
Or if you know them, yes.
I mean,
Well,
I think if we looked at
is there-
Golden, there is a person that's been there for, I can't
He's still
remember.
there, I forget his name right now.
His last name is Glick,
Yep.
I think.
Yep.
Steve?
Steve Glick.
Yeah, Steve's been there the whole
Yeah.
time.
I know Steve, but I didn't realize he was involved.
Yeah, so he,
Unreal.
yeah, so he's
Everything.
got the,
Yeah.
Planning and.
Yeah.
he definitely, if we wanted somebody to come in, he would be the person in Golden that
Okay.
would know all of what's happened.
Do you want me to reach out to Steve?
That would be great. That
Okay.
could be a good step.
And then do you have an ideal meeting identified that you would want?
Well, I was going to reach out after this meeting to Wendy to try to reserve this room 2 weeks after, in 2 weeks after Thursday. I got to find out from her what's available.
Okay. Well, so then, it might be like early June or mid-June, so I'll
Yes.
just kind of see but a Thursday evening would be.
Well, anytime, Thursday would be ideal, because it'd just be every other week that we'd be meeting and and I kind of maybe start looking at getting that set up where we have a meeting where it'll be either study session or regular session, because I think we are going to have to meet a little bit more as we start having these discussions to try to meet our deadline of October and figuring out what we're going to do.
All right, well, I'll check with him to see what his schedule might allow and then kind of figure out the actual meeting date. Okay? What other expectations do you have for this evening I know this is more of the informal study session versus your meeting on Thursday night.
I think to use your phrase, you're looking at it. I think this exchange of information, believe it or not, is more information than we've exchanged in like 2 years. Yeah. So, so I appreciate the questions. I mean, you have a feel now for what it is that we're trying to figure out. And I think there are several steps, trying to identify what methods are we going to use to gather the information, gathering the information, and gathering the data, analyzing the data, taking out, getting a plan out of the data, including a plan of no plan, and presenting that in October. And that's a lot actually to chew in a summer, but it has to start somewhere. So the first one is gathering the who.
And then maybe a homework item could be for everyone to kind of dig in on that Bellevue corridor plan, or maybe you feel like you've already.
No, I'm more than happy to review it.
Because I think there are a couple of things in there that might just be helpful in kind of thinking through. It is decades in the making kind of plan, but you actually have money.
Sure. No.
So, that always changes the context of a conversation, right?
So nobody here is resistant to the Bellevue corridor plan, and we're all happy to review it.
Yeah.
But if you ask me to lecture on it right now, I would fail.
Right.
Other than that, how the walking is going to be separated from buildings by trees.
And I think the areas that overlap with your number 1 and number 4 in the plan, just to kind of give you, and then there is some discussion about streetscape and or infrastructure type improvements. So I think that those would be the big pieces to kind of spend a little extra time with.
Yeah.
Because the plan is, bigger than what overlaps just with the urban renewal. But, so, what else?
There are actually implementation recommendations in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are.
Good.
So that's that other section, yeah. And then in terms of where we are with the comprehensive plan, Right now, that whole section of the city is sort of still up for discussion. So what's the best way to kind of make sure that your input gets incorporated into that? I think I'd love to hear your reactions, sort of how the Bellevue plan influences your thinking, and then just kind of look at those pieces. I don't know if I see that much change from existing land use. But I'd love to hear how that kind of plays out for you. We have a ton of resources up on envisionlittleton.org. I didn't come this evening to kind of present where we are in the plan, but that's something that we could definitely schedule for you and kind of give you an update of where we are in that planning process. Bulk of what we spent time on to date is really kind of getting a sense of where those core residential areas are. And then I think what's left and what we hope to discuss in the community are really some of the key corridors, which obviously Bellevue, Littleton Boulevard, Santa Fe, Broadway, Mineral. I mean, they're all the usual suspects.
Kathleen, in my mind, we've got a moving target. We've got the comp plan from 2013. We have neighborhood plans from over there. We've got the Bellevue corridor plan, and now we're going to be doing something with Kendigan Keys. If Kendigan Keys comes up with a concept or character types that is in conflict with the Bellevue corridor plan, how are we supposed to react to that? And when will Kendigan Keys have that piece of it done so we know how closely aligned they may or may not be in?
Well, the intention there is that all of the previous planning work of the city gets pulled through. So we're paying a lot of attention to make sure that we don't naturally create those conflicts first. One of the things that we're spending the bulk of our time now is how can we map out the city using Kendigan Keys. Sort of, they almost have this methodology of how they talk about land use. They talk about it in terms of community character. So it incorporates a lot of design, which I think is helpful in the context of having a Littleton conversation, because for people that have lived here like natives, right? Like whether they came and stayed forever or they're brand new, there's a look and feel that is Littleton, right? So I think it's really helpful for us to have that conversation. It's not just land use, like put some residential there, put some commercial there. It really becomes that context and that sort of design features. And you're really familiar with their work, which some of you may be not as familiar. I think there's a perfect opportunity to kind of get up to speed on this methodology with our next speaker series. So we're hosting that on May 22nd, and we have one of the owners of Kendigan Keys, so Brett Keast is coming, and he sort of developed this methodology. I kind of almost think of it as like they have their own like little dictionary, right? So you have to kind of wash off what you know about these words and really adopt sort of their definition. So that might be helpful for those of you that are able to make that. It's an evening presentation at the museum, and registration is available online. envisionlittleton.org is the easiest place to find that. So that may be helpful in just kind of understanding that piece. Our intention is that we would have the entire city mapped out so that we have the most time with that map. And so we'll present that. Right now we're looking at presenting that. I think it's June 25th is the Tuesday. So if it's the 24th, I'm sorry. But so June 25th that we would present that map, and it becomes very much a working draft. And we're trying to get as much of that defined so that we can really use it for the transportation master plan, because they're so incredibly linked, right? Like land use causes a ripple effect on transportation, transportation causes a ripple effect on land use. So we're really trying to take that into great consideration throughout the process. So that's kind of where we want to have as much discussion as possible about what the map looks like going into June, but then it doesn't stay static. We just keep getting all of that input. with meeting out in the community center. So, but just to kind of give you a sense of that timing, they have updated our existing land use map, which using their definitions, they said we had the most community character categories in any city they've ever mapped. So it was like over 24, I think. So it's a little confusing. But I think what we've done is tried to give that map a little bit more grounding. So they've just kind of redone that to try and consolidate down, use some hash marks, just so that you can kind of see the continuity a little bit better, as opposed to, I mean, how useful is it to see 24 different categories? It's really hard to kind of intuitively navigate that kind of map. So that's something that we just got that updated. So I'll make sure that I don't think it's quite up on our website yet. So I'll make sure that updated version gets up there. But everything else is referenced. There's a framework on this community character work, and there's a whole series of maps. So you can kind of zoom in right on over this area and see, what exists there now, which is, basically the commercial pieces, the institutional with the county building, and then is there another undeveloped. So it kind of falls, I think, within just 3 categories based on the existing land use right now.
Okay. So I guess the next steps is, one, identifying the property owners. And then having a session where we look at the Bellevue corridor plan and how it may dovetail with the urban renewal plan for Columbine Square. Anything else at this point? And then maybe developing the next steps on how we would engage the property owners over there and start having a discussion with them. What our target, how we'd go about doing that, what our, again, I'm not looking personally, where we're going to say, here's what we can do for you, or here, it's basically, I want to hear on a larger picture, what do they see for that area as property owners, and maybe they're also the business owners. How do they see it changing over time? How do they want it to look? Again, I just think that would be a good conversation. I don't know through the Bellevue corridor plan and the Envision Littleton how much property owners and business owners have been engaged through that process. I mean, it sounds like you've had some success with some of them, but when it comes to that area, it may not be as comprehensive as we'd like.
Yeah, and last year's work was, really guided more about the unifying vision piece. So I think for one of the company that I mentioned, right, that was an opportunity to kind of really understand for employees, the vast majority that don't live here, about their experience and kind of getting a sense of how people see us as opposed to how we see ourselves. So, it became a helpful way to kind of start a relationship with them. So I'll look at that database piece and get a sense from our staff how long that may take to pull together, and just kind of where that fits in their overall set of demands. And then I think what would make sense if you have time in an upcoming meeting is maybe to have some discussion about what you think those interview questions would be.
Okay.
And then if you want to share those with me, I'm happy to kind of help craft those. Because I think one thing that's super helpful is if you stay very consistent with the questions that you're asking, then it's much easier to get a better sense of kind of where there's commonality or where there may be differences. But if you want to start working on those, then I'm happy to kind of take a look at those.
Good.
Once you have those.
Good, that's good.
In your experience, is there data in the housing study? We did a housing study that had a lot of really interesting data about future trends and such. Would that be helpful in any of this? Has it been incorporated into any of these other plans in terms of
Like all of-
changing landscape?
Right, I was gonna say, all of that's getting pulled through, because, I mean, that was the most important thing that we, when in negotiating our work with Candid Keys, was like, we've done a lot of planning.
Right.
I think, but, you know, if you're familiar with what a comprehensive plan does, I mean, it is, you know, some people call it the mothership, I would call it the North Star, but it really does set that policy framework, and that's one of the biggest pieces that we're missing. You know, so it's not as much focused on the implementation piece as it is setting that policy over, you know, a longer period of time. The TMP does that piece too, but most importantly, those two documents together allow us to sit at a table in a very different way with other partners. I mean, I wish that there were a money tree out back. Could you plant one? You know, the reality of getting anything done is that it's going to be about partnerships, right? Just like this one. So, you know, you're the best version of yourself sitting at that table when you know what you want and you know who you are. And so I think that's what's going to be most important about these plans. And they are going to be a higher level look. I think they're also going to identify where we need to dig a little deeper. And so Bellevue plan, the corridor vision feels a little bit like the cart before the horse. You know, because that would be the next step after a comprehensive plan update.
Yeah,
And so, you know, it'll be an opportunity for us to kind of, I think for a lot of members of the community, it's like that's kind of where we're heading, is that there may be a need to really understand the specifics of a particular area beyond the comprehensive plan. But
I was just gonna add, we need to go back and review, but don't forget, the Bellevue quarter plan already asked a lot of these questions in that area. So a lot of these questions got asked and answered to create that Bellevue quarter plan. I'm not sure, I know there's several outreach meetings, we'll have to go back and review how many, but maybe it's important to me to even pull some more information out that isn't necessarily in the plan, so you all have a better
That sounds
understanding.
good. How would I lay my hands on that data?
Bellevue quarters, well, again,
Right, but I mean,
the background,
yeah, like, what you're describing, it sounds like surely that exists somewhere in that documentation.
yeah, I would think it's in there. I haven't gone back and reviewed it lately,
Yeah,
so I'm not
I
sure
see it.
exactly
I feel
where,
like
but it
it's-
probably captures at a high level. What I like to do is
Right.
go back and at least see, you know, try to find out
That sounds
how many
great.
people
That sounds, yeah.
talk to and what areas specifically and that kind
yeah,
of thing.
because I think it is just an overview of. Trying to think.
You don't
Yeah, I
have
think
to.
it's very, so when you look at the plan, there won't be as much of that background in there, so we'll see if we can kind of piece some of that together from.
Yeah, because you don't have to, this isn't a quiz, you don't have to know the
Yeah.
answer right now. You
Right,
can get a hold of us.
Be a test later.
Kathleen, one other thing that I would be interested in is a list of infrastructure needs over there. What is the city already committed to doing? What is the city really want to do but can't do? When urban renewal was brought back to this community, they were told that the money would be spent on infrastructure projects. So I think that we have an obligation to at least look at what the needs are. And I suppose when I think about infrastructure, then I think about the comp plan and some of the changes that may happen as a result of streetscape, or what Chain may or may not do. Whatever's on that list, I think has been mentioned. It needs to be something that's not going to be torn out 2 years from now.
yeah. And, you know, I'm glad that we're doing both plans at the same time, because I think there's a lot of overlap there between the transportation planning and the land use piece. And like I said, all of the areas left for big discussion are along those corridors, so there's a lot of overlap between the two plans. So,
Yeah, you know, to Carol's point, and I think, and also Jason and Cindy talked about this, one of the main reasons we want to engage the city and partner with the city is because we don't want to spend money on something that the city doesn't support.
Yeah. Well, and likewise, the other thing that we know, what we are very clear on is they appear to want us to do something. So in other words, and because things haven't worked out, the meeting that we had a month and a half ago was very clear that come to us with a plan. Even if the plan is no plan, but come to us with a plan. So there is great support at the council level of us coming up with a plan.
And that may even be still in a conceptual phase. We don't have to have colors picked out.
Right.
We can be.
I think that's the expectation.
No, if one of the examples I use is a matching grant, and if through this discussion we see that there is interest in doing that, I think our goal is to say there's interest, and here are the steps we're going to move towards meeting that interest, or making sure we've exhausted it, And that's part of, I think, what we're trying to do is, we're not going to have it say, yes, we're going to award X amount of money in 30 days, but I think we need to have a plan that definitely moves us towards, whatever it is we want to do, whether it's matching grants, streetscapes, or something else. How we have a mapped out plan of how we're going to meet that goal.
Okay. So just to recap where we are, right? So the database of owners, I'll do that piece. You're going to work on interview questions.
And we're going to
You're going to all review the Bellevue plan.
Right.
I'm going to try and find you background on the outreach that was done. I'm going to reach out to Steve at Golden to see what his schedule in June may look like. And then, Randy, I'm volunteering you. Listen up. No. And then we'll find out what investments are planned in infrastructure along Bellevue, what we've got in the.
And Kathy, I wouldn't
There's
limit
like
it to
one,
just
two.
Bellevue. I mean, Columbine Urban Renewal Plan is more than just Bellevue.
Yeah.
Right.
I was just thinking.
Yeah,
like
it seems to me that
that
would be a
part,
great
right?
way to spend money that benefits the whole area.
Yeah. So
Okay.
we can kind of find out what's planned on the next. I don't know. Probably have what to find. So we'll figure that out. And that sounds like our marching orders.
Yes, ma'am. Yes. I really appreciate you spending time with us. It's both of you. It's been very helpful.
Great.
Very good.
Anything further? All right. And this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Kevin.